Jordan, to our discussion of the Golden Bough, and a general welcome for the audience as well. It was a bit of a long night for me, but I have found with these presentations, you have to go when you have the time allotted to present.
That's right.
So we're going to so this is going to be a bit of a coffee talk episode. You want to grab your favorite caffeinated or uncaffeinated beverage and make it happen. Yeah. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Sounds great.
All right. Today, our focus will be Chapter 5, Section 3, the magical control of the sun, and Chapter 5.4, the magical control of the wind, from Chapter 5, the magical control of the weather. This presentation explores Frazer's The Golden Bough, delving into ancient rituals to control the sun and wind, where sympathetic magic, specifically homeopathic magic, or the kind that is like produces like, empowered early societies to shape nature. We'll note a potential synchronicity with the Apollo program, its solar name echoing these magical ambitions. We'll also document another reference to magic in Kubrick's filmography. This time it comes through his collaboration with Terry Southern. And we'll conclude by addressing Enochian magic, a 16th century angelic system of ritualistic invocations Frazer overlooked, likely due to its esoteric complexity. And that, addressing Enochian magic, if you've been keeping up to date on this series, last presentation, Jordan was like, can you define Enochian magic for me? And I was so exhausted and spent by the end of it. I was like, probably not. I can't really say a lot. So I wanted to circle back around to that and help us get a greater understanding of it, although I have so much to learn about what Enochian magic is. But I wanted to let you know that I did that for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
It was real difficult. It involved about a half-hour conversation with Grok.
Oh. I'm excited to hear more.
All right. Okay. So let's go to... before we go to the next slide, if we're still on slide 69, I just want to address these images in the title slide. The Terry Southern movie that we're going to be talking about in its connection to Kubrick is The Magic Christian. I highly recommend everybody see that. I've read a couple Terry Southern books and seen a couple of his films, but this is by far my favorite. And then we have a woodcut here of Edward Kelly, who we've brought up in previous presentations in connection to John Dee and Enochian magic. And this is going to be relevant, the Apollo 13 patch with the horses drawing the sun across the sky. So that's what that's from. Okay, so if we can go to slide 70. Jordan, have you seen The Magic Christian? I can't remember.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. We're gonna put that
I'm a
in the
good
queue.
stand-in audience.
All right. So today's Golden Bough reading drew me in with its vivid depiction of sun rituals and their ancient aim to harness celestial forces, which oddly aligns with the 1967 Apollo 1 fire, a moonship named for a sun god devoured by flames. Though the tragedy stemmed from technical failures, not ritual intent, its mythic resonance endures. Greek worship of Apollo and Helios involved animal offerings, not human sacrifice. Still, the events reflect humanity's timeless drive to conquer nature. These rituals illuminate deep cultural impulses, urging us to reflect on the cosmic forces that shape our myths and modern aspirations. And Frazer actually had a quote that tied into the sun worship of the ancient Greeks and Apollo. If this comes from the magical control of the sun, the ancient Greeks believed that the sun drove in a chariot across the sky. Hence, the Rhodians, who worshiped the sun as their chief deity, annually dedicated a chariot and 4 horses to him and flung them into the sea for his use. Doubtless, they thought that after a year's work, his old horses and chariot would be worn out. It was as natural for the inhabitants of the valley of Sparta to do this as it was for the islanders of Rhodes to throw the chariot and horses into the sea, into which the sun seemed to them to sink at evening. For thus, whether on the mountain or in the sea, the fresh horses stood ready for the weary god, where they would be most welcome at the end of his day's journey. So Yeah, and in the background here, these images, this is the crew of Apollo 1, and the background here is an ancient Aztec ritual that involved human sacrifice for the strengthening of the sun, if you're curious where that comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into, I'm not, and like I said in this, like, it's just an uncanny coincidence. I think it's just like one of those questions about, did the universe organize itself in such a way to present this synchronicity? So if we go to slide 71, we're going to go through an index of the rituals that are connected to eclipses and the magical control of the sun in the chapters for today, okay?
Awesome.
All right, so if we can bring that up on screen. So in the Golden Bough, James Frazer's section on the magical control of the sun vividly illustrates how diverse cultures use symbolic rituals to influence the sun's light and movement, particularly during eclipses, blending magic and religion to address fears of celestial decline. For instance, the Ojibways of North America shot fire-tipped arrows skyward during a solar eclipse to rekindle the sun, believing it was fading, while the Senchis of Peru fired burning arrows to repel a mythical beast they thought was attacking it. Meanwhile, the New Caledonians employed a complex ritual at sunrise, burning plants, corals, and ancestral relics on a mountain to invoke ancestors and make the sun burning hot, clearing clouds and ensuring sunshine. These practices, detailed further in the accompanying chart, reflect a universal human impulse to control the sun through sympathetic magic, where actions like firing arrows or burning offerings mimicked desired cosmic outcomes, revealing both cultural ingenuity and deep reverence for the sun's vital role. So you have to think back about what sympathetic magic is and how there's this like magical ether tether between the actions that are acted out on Earth and what happens in the heavens, right? So, they're spiritually connected in some way. And I've got here, I made references to the ones that involved eclipses. There's even a lunar one in here, but I pretty much, the way I'm going to conduct this is to probably cite 2 or 3 examples, and if you would like to screenshot the charts for your own personal reference point, go to it. Because it does get a little repetitious.
Yeah.
But I think the point is kind of driven home here. Did anyone jump out at you?
My mind was going to, could I remember if any of these cultures had the ability to predict the eclipses? I feel like that flavors the rituals in possibly different directions, and I have to imagine at least some of them did. It's just not.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing about the eclipses. I'm not studied up on this right at the moment, but a lot of people go, well, look at modern science and look at how wonderful it is because it can predict these eclipses. That's like proof of the model of the universe. And the reality of it is that these things work on cyclic patterns, right?
Yes.
Like they repeat every so many years. And so you don't actually need to have advanced cosmology to anticipate when an eclipse is going to happen. You just have to have good record keeping. So I'm just speaking off the top of my head. It's been a long time since I've looked into this subject, but it wouldn't surprise me that if you have an elite group of wizards, which is what Frazer is talking about, that they would have access to these tables and then be able to mix it together with the magical rituals. And we've seen this in Frazer. Oh, look, the wizards have all this power, but in reality, they just have observations. But they hold their power in the society because people think they are godmen who are somehow woven into the fabric of the universe and can do something the average person can't do. So, and I think it's worth thinking about. This still persists today. The magician becomes the priest becomes a scientist. It's got this aura of godlike figure that, as Frazer's dialectical practice goes, where you have magic giving rise to religion and then the synthesis being science, you see that glow being transported from individual to individual depending on the epoch.
Yeah, that makes sense. The supporting the sun's journey, almost like it feels like this co-creation with the sun or with God. It's like the language there is very interesting, and I think shifts me out of how I was defining sympathetic magic before as almost this anti-animist perspective. Like Frazer is kind of interpreting these things in a very causal way. But this like supporting the sun's journey, that to me feels like it potentially has room for some of these, like, not necessarily softer, but that's the word that's coming to mind, these softer ways of doing magic, or just being a part of the unfolding of reality or consciousness or whatever is happening, versus necessarily trying to like meddle or control.
I mean, the thing is, it's like it's not a one size fits all sort of paradigm. You see often, and Frazer doesn't really do it a great service, nor have I. The complexity of all these different beliefs that these people's had in these societies is quite complex. And, it's not like, oh, here's clearly a society that's practicing homeopathic magic. Here's a society that's doing some blend between homeopathic and contagious. It's kind of a hodgepodge, and it gets really messy. And sometimes these situations, there's like religious supplication mixed together with imitative magic. So where you have acknowledgement of like demons and spirits, and we've seen in scenarios even with like the Mass of Saint Sacer, where you have the priest figure who has a default magical tool bag that he can resort to in times of distress. So it all it runs together a lot. It's not so neat and tidy.
Yeah, almost any attempt to put everything in boxes is going to miss some of the complexity. Yeah. Well, eclipses are fascinating. If I really
they really are.
I highly recommend. Austin Coppock has a course on eclipses that pulls from different astrological traditions that I think is symbolically super rich, if that's something people want to go really deep into.
Cool. All right. So let's I mean, we can look at some more here in chart 72 if people want to screenshot this. These are rituals for strengthening the sun. I mentioned some of those already, and if you give them a second to screenshot that, and maybe we can go to 73.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the beliefs that are related to these sun rituals. So he's going to delve into these beliefs, revealing how societies driven by cosmological misunderstandings employed offerings and sacrifices to influence the sun's journey. The Brahmins of India performed morning offerings as a magical act, believing the sun would not rise without them, while the ancient Mexicans, viewing the sun as, let me see if I can get this right, Ipalnumuhuani, or he by whom men live, offered bleeding human and animal hearts to renew its heat, light, and motion, a practice that fueled annual wars and a brutal system of human sacrifice. And I think by ancient Mexicans, he may be referring to the Aztecs, which I cited in slide 70. I should probably check that to be sure. It sounds like that. I'm multitasking here. The Aztecs, also known as the Mexica, were a powerful Mesoamerican civilization that flourished in central Mexico from the 14th to the 16th centuries. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was right about that. That's what Google AI says. So reliant on this AI.
Is it right?
Similarly, it's as right as it's going to get right now. Okay,
sure.
If I have to fix it later, I will. Similarly, the Rhodians, who worship the sun as their primary deity, we've already talked about this, annually dedicated a chariot and 4 horses, casting them into the sea at sunset to provide the sun with fresh steeds for its celestial journey. As detailed in the accompanying chart, these rituals across cultures like Judah, Sparta, and Persia, where horses and chariots were sacrificed to support the sun's path, reflect a shared reliance on sympathetic magic and symbolic acts, underscoring both the reverence of the sun and the profound societal impacts of these misguided cosmological beliefs. So haughty that we have the wrong cosmology here. But it's interesting how much the magic is presupposed by certain cosmological foundations. And if we go to slide 74, late last night, I was looking, I recalled this when I was reading the Bible, when I read the Bible, maybe the first time through, the second time through. There's actually references, like we saw just now that it's not just the Greeks, but it was also the kings of Judah that were worshiping the sun. And I was like, wow, that's really and I just did a cursory search, and there's actually reference to this in the Bible. And I remember it years ago sticking out to me. And this is from 2 Kings or 2 Kings 23:11 from the New Century Version. It's just the one that I had a graphic that popped up. Judah's kings had placed horses at the front door of the temple of the Lord in the courtyard near the room of Nathan-Melech, an officer. These horses were for the worship of the sun, so Josiah removed them and burned the chariots that were for sun worship also. So, yeah, it's so interesting. How did this happen, right? Like, how did the kings of Judah get the sun worshiping belief? Did they get it from the Persians? Did they get it from somewhere else? I'm not exactly sure, but it's there in the Bible. So, and I guess unless Jordan wants to add something, we can go on to slide 75.
Let's keep going.
Okay. I think this is pretty straightforward here. I mean, these magical practices were pretty costly, especially for the Aztecs or the ancient Mexicans, as Frazer calls them. And by the way, Frazer was writing this in the early 20th century, late 19th century. There's going to be like some outdated terminology here. I'm not sure how much these terms are considered PC still, but obviously to do these sun worshiping rituals or the strengthening rituals in the Aztec culture, you had to get fresh bodies to sacrifice all the time. So this led to lots of war and temples, and not to mention all the horses that had to be killed for the Greeks and the Rhodians and the Spartans. So,
or so the stories say.
Yeah, that's what the stories. There's actually dispute. As I was looking into some biblical commentary on the reference to the sun worshiping the kings of Judah, whether or not they actually sacrificed the horses or if they just used them symbolically. But I don't know enough. There seems to be some dispute about how many horses they were killing. That seems like quite the resource to just do away with.
Mm-hmm.
But okay. So now we're going to go to wind.
Ooh.
Oh, actually, we're going to... No, we're not. I'm wrong. We're going to go to slide 76, which we're going to look at some more sun controlling rituals. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Frazer explores assorted cultural rituals designed to magically influence the sun's movement across the sky, revealing how societies use symbolic acts to align celestial motion with their practical or seasonal needs. In the Peruvian Andes, people set iron hooks in ruined towers to stretch a net across a pass, aiming to catch the sun and halt its journey. The Eskimo of Igloolik in autumn played cat's cradle to entangle the sun in string meshes, hoping to prevent its southward disappearance, while in spring they used cup and ball to hasten its northward return. Similarly, Australian blackfellows delayed the sun's setting by placing a sod in a tree's fork toward the west, symbolically anchoring it, or hastened its descent by throwing sand skyward and blowing toward it, as if pushing it into the night sands. I like that. I thought that was pretty beautiful. These rituals, as further detailed in the accompanying chart, reflect a profound belief in human ability to control the sun's path through sympathetic magic, tying symbolic actions to the rhythms of survival and seasonal change. So you can take a screenshot of that if you like.
Well, today we're seeing rituals, processes, it's framed as scientific, to decrease the power of the sun.
Go on. Tell me what you're alluding to, or do you not want to say?
Oh, no. I mean, this is...
Because we'll get shadow banned,
Yeah.
and our 150 viewers won't watch.
Oh, I know. Let me see if I can find the article, but this is current news.
Are you talking about the dimming of the sun?
Yeah. Dimming of the sun. UK scientists to launch outdoor geoengineering experiments. Blocking sunlight could temporarily slow climate crisis, but the technologies remain highly controversial. From The Guardian.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, and it doesn't help that they named that program Satan, right?
Did they really?
It's like, yeah, it's like Project Satan, like
This feels like a hoax.
No, it's true.
Well,
maybe I'm thinking
level?
of a different one. It's like stratospheric aerosol
transport and nucleation, or Satan.
Yeah.
Balloon systems.
Yeah. So, like, what are we supposed? Like, what are you, like? You see that? Like, what are you supposed to think when you see that? Like, okay, let's say it's like purely scientific. It's like, well, what's going on? We clearly have. There's a lot of issues that flow forth from that, right? There's like a consent issue, whether from like a governmental or world consciousness, right? And then there is like, it's just not a contradictory agenda to say all the clean energy, such as like solar power, where we need my understanding is that we need like intensification of the sun's light in order to drive the solar grid. I mean, I haven't thought too deeply about that, but that seems like, this is kind of hard for me to get my mind around it, just hearing the headline that you read. And then like, how are we not to think about this in a ritualistic way when it's intentionally given the name of a fallen angel? Like, how are we not to see either air quotes primitive religion or magic in it? And then if you do say, it's like baiting you. If you do say there's something ritualistic or religious about this, then like you're an anti-science crazy person. So I don't know what to do with that. I mean, I don't know what to do with that. Like, it's like the same deal with naming the space missions after the sun god. Like, it's in some ways it's like kind of intuitive to have your mind drift into these places and say, like, is there some sort of ancient religious magical practice at work, or it's purely scientific? Like, why even flirt with that? Like, just give it some random number if you're going to call it a project. Just stop giving it these code names. I don't know. What do you think? It's like you're damned if you do. If you deny that there's like a religious dimension to it, like you're kind of intentionally blinding yourself to it. And if you acknowledge it, you're crazy.
To me, there's obviously a spiritual component to it, but yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because we have rituals here to dim the sun versus rituals in the past to expand, intensify the sun.
Right, but Frazer would say this isn't a ritual. This is a method. Frazer would say this because right. I'm just making the. Totally. I'm just playing. I'm trying to play devil's advocate. You can't, because I'm guilty of this. I'm doing this and I'm trying to anticipate the criticism of what I'm doing. People say, look, though Frazer says that science is primitive, or that magic is primitive science, you can't then say that all these things are rituals. These are a perfected understanding of how the universe really works. But then what happens when we find out that we are the ones with the erroneous cosmology, and these rituals, these methods were actually turn out to be rituals. We just didn't understand that. So we could simultaneously say these are methods that we believe to be mirroring nature, applied to nature, and are true. But we also have to understand a la Kuhn that science is provisional, and in time these will be seen as the primitive magic that the Aztecs and others were practicing. I guess the question is, can you step outside of your present paradigm and see a ritual when it's happening? And it seems like some of us are becoming emboldened to say that, like you are right now.
Everyone's going to have to come to their own understanding of what is true.
What makes you, I don't disagree with you, but what makes you think it's a ritual? Outside of it being called Project Satan, why would you call it a ritual after everything we've looked at with Frazer?
Well, to be clear, I think magic's real.
Right. So you don't think magic is primitive science. You actually might think it's like the ultimate science is what you might say.
Maybe. I haven't thought of it that way.
Yeah.
But my perspective is not, what they're doing now doesn't do anything, or it doesn't do what they want it to do. No, I think it's spiritual warfare. I think there is a energetic layer to it and a physical layer to it. The sun is a consciousness. So putting a barrier between us and this coexisting consciousness upon which we have come to rely on, at least in this physical realm, seems interesting. And I didn't know what it was named. But you asked, I answered. I'm not here to persuade anyone or to claim that I have exclusive access into what is true. But to say it's ritual to me does not diminish it, the same way that saying something is symbolic does not diminish it.
Right.
Those are
like, it's truer on a higher level. So I'm curious who most accurately represents this point of view. Well, I'm going to spiral on it later.
Okay.
I mean, I guess that's why we share the interest in Jung.
Totally.
Okay. All right.
Reel it in.
Let's get to slide 77. There was some miscellaneous weather control, celestial phenomenon stuff before we get to wind. So slide 77. Frazer unveils a fascinating array of cultural rituals aimed at magically shaping celestial and weather phenomenon, showcasing how societies intertwined observation and belief to exert control over natural forces. In New Guinea, natives guided by the lunar cycle to mark months hurled stones and spears at the moon to hasten its progress, eager to speed the return of friends laboring on distant tobacco plantations. The Malays, wary of a bright sunset glow's fever-inducing power, sought to douse it by spitting water and casting ashes skyward, protecting the vulnerable from illness. Meanwhile, the Ch.5.3-5.4 Indians of North America burned splinters from lightning-struck trees, believing this could summon cold weather, perhaps noting that thunderstorms often precede cooler air. Or in spring, use the same ritual to preserve snow's crust on high ground during travel. These practices, further detailed in the accompanying chart, blend magical thinking with environmental cues, reflecting humanity's enduring quest to influence the moon's pace, safeguard health, and command the elements through symbolic acts. So, those are pretty interesting. Throwing the spears at the moon, that was my favorite.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
That's...
What are coyotes doing when they howl, or wolves when they howl at the moon?
Yeah. And what are rockets, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, like, rockets are projectiles, you know.
True.
They even name some, like, I believe there's a javelin rocket. So it's like, and these are going towards the moon. That's interesting. All right. Magical control of the wind. You ready for this?
Yeah.
All right. Frazer unearths the ancient art of wind control, where societies wielded magic to harness a force vital for sailing and survival. For these cultures, a breeze could mean a bountiful harvest, a gale, a ruined village. Frazer reveals how rituals rooted in sympathetic magic used actions like blowing to mimic and command the wind. These practices, detailed in the forthcoming tables, blended creativity with caution, from rubbing charm stones to enforcing taboos against angering the wind. Unlike religion, which begs divine favor, Frazer notes magic empowered humans to directly shape nature, casting it as primitive science. From ancient chants to modern weather forecasts, these rituals reflect humanity's enduring quest to master the skies, a spark of ingenuity that still inspires. So here we have on slide 79, the rituals to create or strengthen wind, which captures a collection of 10 cultural practices from diverse regions, including New Guinea, Scotland, Greenland, Finland, and the Shetland Islands, where communities employed sympathetic magic to generate or intensify wind, often to meet practical needs like aiding maritime travel or influencing weather conditions. These rituals, all rooted in imitative magic, involve actions that directly mimic the wind's behavior to bring about the desired effect, reflecting the principle of like produces like. For instance, the Billy natives of New Guinea blow with their mouths to create wind, imitating the wind's blowing action, while the Motu Motu in the same region open bamboo to start a storm, symbolizing the release of wind through the act of opening. Scottish witches beat a wet rag on a stone to raise wind, mimicking the turbulence of a storm. And in Greenland, a postpartum woman blows air from her mouth to start a storm, replicating the storm's windy force. Finnish, Lapland, Shetland, Lewis, and Isle of Man witches tie knots to control wind strength, untying them to release wind in varying intensities. Moderate breezes, gales, or hurricanes, imitating the wind's release through the untying action. Similarly, the New Guinea natives strike a windstone to create wind or a hurricane, with the striking motion symbolizing the summoning of wind. These rituals underscore a widespread belief in human agency over natural forces, where symbolic mimicry empowers communities to manipulate the wind for survival, a navigation or ritual purposes, often in contexts where wind was critical to their livelihoods, such as sailing or storm management. So we've got those. Take a screenshot here for 79 and 80, if you would like to do that, according with Jordan's pacing. Any of those sound interesting to you?
Ooh.
Lots of witches all over the place. And I hadn't heard about Isle of Man witches. And something about perhaps Tempest is relevant here. I should have.
Oh.
Yeah. Do witches summon wind in the Tempest? I think they do. Yeah, in Shakespeare's The Tempest, Prospero, I should have had a picture of Prospero, a magician in the play's main character does indeed summon a storm using his magic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a fun play.
It's been a long time since I've seen it. It's good. But yeah. Okay. Keep going, or did you want to comment on any of these?
I think we can keep going. I liked the examples you gave at the outset. They seem pretty similar.
Yeah. It's kind of, I mean, you can see why Jung took such a shine to Frazer's work. It's like, okay, we get it. Like, everybody's doing the same thing everywhere. It certainly strengthens the idea of the collective unconscious and archetypal theory. Okay. Let's go to slide 81. These are rituals to calm or stop the wind. And this chart is going to encompass 18 practices from a wide array of cultures, including the Yakuts, the Hottentots, Fuegian wizards, Central Eskimo, and various South American and African groups, all of whom sought to halt or calm the wind, often perceived as a destructive spirit or demon. Here we have the mixture with entities, through symbolic actions rooted in sympathetic magic. The majority of these rituals rely on imitative magic, where actions mimic the desired outcome of stopping the wind or expelling its spirit. Though one ritual, Ulysses' use of a leather bag, involves contagious magic due to the bag's prior contact with the winds. For example, the Yakuts wave a stone tied to a stick to create a cool breeze, symbolizing the calming of harsher winds, while Hottentots hang a fat skin on a pole, believing its fall will cause the wind to stop, imitating the wind's cessation. Central Eskimo perform multiple rituals, such as whipping the wind with seaweed to drive it away, or conducting a fire ritual where they invite the wind demon to warm itself before attacking it with arrows and water, mimicking the expulsion of the demon to create a calm. In South America, the Payaguas threaten the wind with firebrands, and the Guaycuras intimidate storms with armed men and screams, both actions imitating the act of scaring the wind or its demon. Similarly, the Batak of Sumatra and Kayans of Borneo attack or threaten storm demons with swords, replicating the act of fighting off the storm, while Bedouins in Eastern Africa stab whirlwinds to drive away the spirit, symbolizing expulsion through stabbing. Ulysses' use of a leather bag given by Aeolus stands out as contagious magic, as the bag contains the winds, and opening it leverages that connection to control them. Though the act of opening also has an imitative element, these rituals highlight the cultural perception of wind as a malevolent force that can be confronted and subdued through symbolic mimicry, often driven by the need to protect homes, resources, or lives during harsh weather. Oh, the idea of fighting the storm is particularly amusing.
Mm-hmm.
But that probably communicates a belief in cultural superiority or something. I don't know. But I think as a child, maybe I thought about doing similar things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think so. If I think back,
Mhm.
I think it's an interesting idea. I don't think Frazer talks too much about it, but I think I instinctively did just magical little rituals without even knowing it. I was just playing pretend, out in the woods and stuff.
Sure.
I think I did that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting question if I don't think Frazer has addressed this, but do magical ideas intuitively present themselves to the child? It's not just certain cultures, but it happens at certain stages of individual development as well.
Yeah.
I don't. Did you ever do anything like that? Come
Oh,
up
yeah.
with a ritual as a kid?
Everything felt very sacred as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it'd be interesting to think about, if the individual goes through the evolutionary process as these societies do, or these time periods do, going from magical to religious to scientific. Am I coming out of my religious phase and going into a scientific phase,
Yeah.
circling back around and going into a magical phase?
Yeah, to reframe it, I'm curious. I have an answer for myself, but to
Mhm.
think of it
Well,
as
feel free to share it. I mean, that's part of what we're doing
you'll
here.
assume it. But there's potentially the process of evolving or growing out of that, or are we just more disconnected from nature and the magical essence of the reality?
Sure.
Materialist would say the first, the mystic would say the second.
It's a fair point. By the way, since you're in control of the slides, would you mind giving people a few seconds to screenshot slides 81 through 83 so they can review these rituals on their own time?
We're on 81 now. We've been there.
Just give them about 15 seconds for each one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is going to be good when we go back and post and add some music, some chill hop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Maybe. If people have feedback on that, it would be very welcome.
Well, I liked it.
You did?
I thought it was cool. Mm-hmm. I liked it. I appreciate your editing of that.
Always trying something new. Okay. I think we're good there. Everyone should have had a chance if they want to snag the slides.
Okay.
And now we're on 80.
All right,
84.
the last one of the Frazer part before we get into the schizo stuff.
Great. I got it in early.
So, yeah. So, this one's the beliefs about wind rituals, and it includes 2 entries. This was just kind of some residual stuff that was left over. But it includes 2 entries from the Estonians and the Gulf of Finland sailors, focusing on cultural beliefs and that attribute wind to supernatural causes without involving specific ritual actions to control it, providing insight into the explanatory frameworks these societies use to understand natural phenomena. The Estonians living near Finland believe that harsh spring winds from the north and northeast, which bring illness, are caused by Finnish wizards and witches, particularly dreading 3 days of the cross around Ascension Day, when they fear the winds might be fatal, reflecting a cultural attribution of wind to the magical machinations of their northern neighbors. It's interesting to see these little geographical disputes and blaming certain natural phenomena on different witches and wizards. Similarly, sailors in the Gulf of Finland observe a mysterious ship believed to hail from Finland sailing effortlessly against the wind with full sails, attributing this phenomenon to Finnish magic without performing a ritual themselves, indicating a belief in the supernatural power of Finnish mariners to overcome natural wind constraints. These entries differ from the other charts by lacking active rituals, instead showcasing passive beliefs that explain wind through magical or supernatural agency, often rooted in regional rivalries or maritime lore. The absence of rituals in these cases underscores a cultural tendency to interpret uncontrollable natural forces like wind through a lens of magic and external influence, rather than direct intervention, highlighting the diversity of responses to wind across different societies. Yeah, those Finnish wizards, those Finnish witches, always getting me sick. All right. So should we go on to the parts of this presentation that involve tying up some loose ends?
Well, one thought on what you
Go
just said. It's this trying to kind of blame or find something external to pin reality on. I just personally, when you said that, I was like, oh, where am I doing this? Where am I projecting out onto other people why my own reality is the way it is?
Well, I think we see that this is the temptation, right? Like, with the booming conspiracy theory business, like there's so much obsession with trying to point out ritual and esoteric brotherhoods and things of this nature. I sometimes wonder that we're entering into a situation where the awakened people are just blaming everything on elite wizards. And my theory, as I've gone through this whole journey, I've become much more inclined to identify with simulation theory. And I wonder if that's just like part of the loading script to trap people into it, right? To see us versus them, see ourselves as pure and true against a magical ruling class, when in reality there's a much more repetitive natural algorithm going on in reality. Mm-hmm. So I think about it in that context. It's like these are just like when you're playing Pac-Man, these are these evil wizards or whatever are just like the ghosts that are chasing you down in the maze. But in reality, it's just part of the architecture of the video game we live in.
Yeah, and
I think about it like that.
That's interesting. That somewhat overlaps with how I was thinking about it. I think I was trying to take it to a self-development place of just often, you'll see different types of this external blame propaganda, and it kind of feels like there's flavors for everybody. If you want to get pulled into racial division, there's plenty of content for that.
Right.
if you want to get pulled into what you just outlined, kind of the endless rabbit or an endless hamster wheel of conspiracies and it's big pharma, et cetera, et cetera. I don't hear you saying none of this is actually, it's playing out in front of us, but an over fixation on what's happening on the screen or out there, to me, it's a distraction from focusing where we have the most power, which is within our own daily present reality.
Sure.
It's easy to think back and go, oh, these people were so silly because they blamed the Northerners for their bad weather. But it's like...
Yeah. You know what's so funny? As we're doing this, I don't know if you can tell, but it has started to rain.
No.
Well, yeah, it's raining pretty hard right now.
It was super sunny before.
Yeah, well, I've had all sorts of synchronicities doing this weather magic stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I went on you know this, but a couple days ago I went on Realize Radio, and earlier in the day I'd been working on these wind rituals, and then I got a notification from the Weather Channel saying weather magic. Watch this man get caught up in the wind and leaves or something like that. And then yesterday I was working on a presentation on Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's The Omega Point, and later that day this storm system emerged called the Omega Block, and I'm having these uncanny synchronicities with the weather. So of course it's going to start downpouring as we're talking about weather rituals.
Yeah, it's loud.
And before we even came on, I said, I picked out this Counting Crows song, Rain King, and I was like, oh, we should intro this. And I was like, no, we'll get a copyright strike. And here it comes. It's like a downpour.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's interesting. All right. Can we talk about the Magic Christian?
Yes, please.
I'm going to make you watch this.
Yeah, I need to see it.
Okay.
I'm prepared to discuss Barbarella, though.
I've not seen Barbarella. I know what it looks like, but I've not watched it all the way through. But knowing that Terry Southern's connected to it, I have to watch it now.
There's an angel in Barbarella as well.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. All right. So we're going to break from the Frazer stuff. And, I'm running this like a seminar. Things come up. And I try to stay on topic with the material, but I also have like a lot of different research rabbits I want to chase. And we've talked about Strangelove a lot, so we're going to give some context to Strangelove. So Terry Southern's 1959 novel, The Magic Christian, is a sharp satire. Are you on slide 85, by the way? Yeah, you are. I'll start again. Terry Southern's 1959 novel, The Magic Christian, is a sharp satire where billionaire Guy Grand stages pranks, like bribing people to dive into a vat of excrement and money to expose greed. The titular cruise ship, symbolizing wealth's manipulative allure, hosts a chaotic finale, revealing how easily money sways the public. The 1969 film, directed by Joseph McGrath and co-written by Southern, stars Peter Sellers as Grand and Ringo Starr as his adopted son. And Peter Sellers, is in Strangelove. And there's all sorts of Beatles connections to Kubrick. We'll have to do something on that one day. It's come up periodically. And it features hoaxes like rigging a boxing match. Its slapstick, psychedelic tone softens the novel's biting critique. They have all the money in the world, and you can see how easily that allows them to buy influence and manipulate people. Stanley Kubrick's connection to the Magic Christian began when Peter Sellers gifted him the novel, likely during Lolita, 1962, sparking admiration for Southern's wit. This led Kubrick to hire Southern for Dr. Strangelove, which came out in 1964, reimagined as a black comedy. Though uninvolved in the 1969 film, Kubrick considered Southern for Blue Movie, a satirical erotic project. While unproduced, its provocative themes likely influenced A Clockwork Orange, which came out in 1971. Creative differences halted further collaboration. Kubrick likely resonated with the Magic Christian's message that vast resources can effortlessly manipulate the masses, as seen in his hiring of Southern for Dr. Strangelove's incisive satire. Grant's hoaxes, bending public behavior with wealth, echo Kubrick's critiques of control in Strangelove and A Clockwork Orange. This perspective illuminates how nuclear and space programs, fueled by immense funding, could have shaped global perceptions through spectacle and propaganda, all the while underscoring humanity's vulnerability to orchestrated influence. In a way, we're all little Alexes with our eyes pried open watching a real horror show. And I was thinking about this last night. If we can go to slide 86 here, you think about like what it was like for many of the boomers to be forced to watch these propaganda pieces, survival under atomic attack, and how they were like, growing up in the 80s, they were still kind of pushing this a little bit, but I never had to hide under my desk and do duck and cover. But as a small child, I'm just like, how did anyone think that this was going to do anything, hiding under your desk? I guess it's very ritualistic in a way to like get under the desk, right? The place of learning becomes subservient to the information on top of it. So it's very Clockwork Orangey to me. And you think about that if there is like a power structure, how easy it was people to like, why were there people being like, this is ridiculous? Like what? Or did everybody kind of just be like, yeah, that's a good idea?
I remember we would do like tornado drills, but we would also do shooting drills. Okay, let's not get flagged, but and
yeah, connect the dots.
Well, it was always weird to me when we were doing...
I missed that. I'm older, so I was out of high school when the first big one happened, so
right. But part of it would be you turn off the lights and everyone basically kind of hides. But it was always strange to me because one, the perpetrator in these stories is always a student, and it seemed bizarre to me that a student wouldn't know. It's like the middle of the day. It just seemed weird. Like we're gonna, and I don't know, maybe there's a psychological basis for if you're not visually seen, it's just not as likely I don't know, I could maybe rationalize it, but I remember as a kid just being like, this is strange that we think like hiding in the corner and turning the lights off is gonna... Anyway, it just was weird. It felt weird at the time.
I know. I have thoughts.
Yeah.
So
well, we can leave it at that. But it's just another example of these rituals, these things we do to feel safer as a group, and they also reinforce the story of what we should be afraid of, and have you enact this scenario, even if it doesn't happen to you personally, to get it into your nervous system.
It's like a scare room.
This might be the most...
Yeah, let's come on. We got to get past that one.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, also, money magic. That's an interesting concept, like money having magical properties. I think there's a lot there. And
yeah, it's got all sorts of sigils on it. Our money's filled with Babylonian sigils.
I'm curious if this is going to become relevant again later in the series with the Golden Bough, if something similar. But yeah, it's so obvious.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to censor us, but we live in. I mean, I get down on our society, but we could have lived in one of these other ones where people were burning their witches and deposing their leaders if they didn't make the rain grow or rainfall or the crops grow. So, a little bit of censorship, I guess, is tolerable.
We'll be fine.
All right. Yeah, we'll be fine. All right. No one watches this deep anyway.
It's not in the title. Okay. It's not in the first 15 minutes. It's not the audience we've cultivated.
No. All right, let's go to slide 87. Okay, this is to address. You're like, Luke, what's Enochian magic? I'm like, Jordan, how do I know? I don't practice any of this stuff. But I do want to go deeper into it at some point. But
Okay.
for those that this is just we got a snapshot here. You can take a picture of this, kind of get some core themes. These are like flashcards in case like you're ever at a party and someone wants you to be like, hey, tell me everything you want to know about Enochian magic.
Mm-hmm.
So Enochian magic, born in the 1580s from the occult collaborations of John Dee and Edward Kelly, weaves a intricate tapestry of ceremonial magic rooted in their alleged dialogues with angelic beings. Through scrying sessions, Kelly, a medium, channeled visions of a celestial language, alphabets, and rituals, meticulously recorded by Dee, a scholar of mathematics and astrology. This angelic revelation birthed the Enochian system, featuring a structured language for invoking spiritual forces, elemental tablets like the watchtowers inscribed with cosmic sigils, and 19 incantatory keys, 18 for specific functions and 1 to unlock the 30 ethers, mystical realms explored for wisdom and power. Blending Christian mysticism, Kabbalistic echoes, and Renaissance occultism, Enochian magic seeks spiritual enlightenment and communion with divine hierarchies. So that's what we're going for. This is why they do it. Demanding disciplined rituals of chants, visualizations, and meditation, revived by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, popularized by Aleister Crowley, remains a cornerstone of Western esotericism, though its complexity and debated origins celebrated by practitioners as profound, yet questioned by skeptics as Kelly's invention, rendered a niche and yet potent path to cosmic alignment. So, I guess long and the short of it, they're supplicating angels. Believe that there are fallen or unfallen angels. I tend to not play around with this, but I would like to know intellectually. I'd like how it all fits together a little bit better. But it's my understanding of it's so fragmented. But hopefully this is an expansion. But I think we kind of had touched on some of this already. Was anything new here? Was any of this new to you?
I had forgotten that all of this came through the scrying sessions that Edward Kelly facilitated.
Yep.
So that's a good reminder. I think my interest in this, after we learned more about it, and this was more reading the John Dee book a while ago, I realized how much of angelology, angel myth today really seems to be rooted in Edward Kelly's and John Dee's contributions. So that's really interesting. I mean, Crowley's impact culturally is massive, even if you don't know who he is. And with a lot of this stuff, it's like, we see this in Scientology, all these other things. It's like, there's some juice there, but it doesn't, to me, feel like the whole truth and nothing but the truth, if that makes sense. And it's certainly not something I personally deploy, but it's interesting. I am personally skeptical on like, what do they mean by angel?
Well, again, I mentioned this last time. It advised them to engage in wife swapping. Yeah. So that doesn't seem very holy.
I think the takeaway in general is with any of this, your own discernment is always important.
I dug into it a little bit. I have to, but my understanding is that John Dee, like, I think I may have mentioned this in a previous presentation. My understanding is that he didn't think what he was doing was anti-Christian.
Right.
In fact, he thought it was part of his Christian practice. So he himself, at least outwardly, seemed to identify with Christianity. I'm having trouble understanding how he squared it all, but that requires like a deeper dive into the life of John Dee.
Sure. And we're not all here to do the same things. That's okay.
Oh, maybe. All right. So kind of an error that I have made. I don't want to say it's an error, but like I've been like wondering, like, is Frazer going to get to Enochian magic? Like, what's the deal? Like, it doesn't seem, is Enochian magic relevant to the sympathetic and contagious magic that Frazer is talking about? I haven't really, because I'm still trying to understand what Enochian magic is. Clearly, if it involves rituals, it seems like some of those rituals are going to be sympathetic magic, but I don't know yet. I got to go dig deeper into that. But here's a little chart explaining why Frazer does not touch Enochian magic. I mean, so as far as a historical scope, Frazer studied ancient classical non-Western folk magic, not Renaissance esoteric systems like Enochian, so it just wasn't his focus. In regards to methodological lens, he focused on universal primitive magic and not intellectual Christian-based occultism, though I suspect that it's in there. So I'd like to know if this Enochian magic was a pure revelation or if it had a tradition. It seems like it clearly did, given that it was an amalgamation of Kabbalah and other issues. There was some obscurity in Frazer's era. Enochian magic was obscure. Dee and Kelly's texts had limited circulation before the Golden Dawn revived them. And this goes into the source inaccessibility, didn't have access to the manuscripts, and general misalignment with thesis. It really doesn't fit his framework, which raises an interesting question about whether or not his framework is erroneous. This isn't going away. The more I go into it, the more it keeps popping up. So I imagine this will not be the last time we think about Frazer and Enochian magic.
It's interesting. He talks about Western folk magic quite a bit. He pulls a lot of examples, but this really highlights the absence so far of analyzing or taking into account these more like analytical, or I would say more sanctioned, possibly even more masculine forms of Western magic that come more from like a formal tradition versus a more loosey-goosey intuitive tradition. It's storming.
It is storming. Storm God is saying wrap this up.
Okay.
So we got two slides left. Go to 89. We're going to keep talking about Crowley and Enochian magic. So it might have been the last presentation where I brought up Crowley's Moonchild and its potential connection to 2001 with via the Claypool Delirium band song about Jack Parsons. So I just thought this was really interesting. I when I was doing my podcast with Human Vibration on Realized Radio, she pointed out that, and I've known this, but I didn't really put it all together, that Buzz Aldrin's mother was named Marion Moon, which I knew, but then she said, well, that makes him a moon child. And the implication there is that, that this is a nod to the Crowley influence and the Apollo missions and really Enochian magic, because some of the rituals, though not explicitly named Enochian in Moonchild, clearly are inspired by Enochian magic. And for those, so I just thought that was interesting. I have a lot more. I mean, I have some writing here, but you can clearly, this is a tweet from Buzz talking about how it was his destiny to walk on the moon, since his mom's name was Marion Moon. She actually committed suicide before he did that. And while he was still in the Gemini program, she did that in 1968. And he was in one of his books, I believe it was Reaching for the Moon, he speculated that maybe his fame somehow like added to her emotional burden. I don't know, but that's tough. And as far as the Moonchild book, it's a semi-autographical occult novel about a magical war to create a Moonchild, a child conceived through lunar-aligned rituals to embody a divine entity. White magicians, led by Cyril Gray, battle the Black Lodge to ensure the child's birth. By the way, that's clearly a source of inspiration for Twin Peaks, so you should check that out. Blending thelemic philosophy, satire, and occult theory in a narrative spanning England and Italy. Nods to Enochian magic include the ritual structure, which mirrors Crowley's angelic invocations from the vision and the voice, with trance states and cosmic alignments resembling Enochian scrying. The novel's emphasis on lunar energies and ordered magical hierarchies also echoes Enochian systems, though specific Enochian calls or tablets are not explicitly named. So, fascinating. Just keep digging up stuff. Do you want to add anything to that before we revisit the Georges Millet sci-fi film?
Mary and Mary sticks out to me.
Yep.
I just was shaking my head about this.
Yeah, so I mean, it's Mary and Moon or Mary on Moon, and it is so sunny out right now, and I'm sure there's going to be a rainbow going on right now. It's so sunny and raining so hard. But yeah, the Mary on the Moon.
They say in Texas, they probably say this other places. When it's sunny and it's raining.
What do they say?
The devil's beating his wife.
Why do they say that?
I don't know.
It's weird.
It is weird, but it felt relevant.
Yeah, the Mary on the Moon, there's a lot of like religious iconography that, or not a lot, there's some religious iconography that like shows like the Virgin Mary on the moon.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh.
Or stars.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Just the Google AI, that like is a reference to it drew up that's like a reference to Revelation 12. The depiction of Mary standing on a moon,
right,
often a crescent, stems from the book of Revelation, chapter 12. The vision describes a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars. Oh, 12 stars, eh? This imagery is often interpreted as a symbolic representation of Mary, the Mother of God, and her role in the salvation story. Oh, I'm going to spiral on this. I'm going to have to revisit this.
Good.
Do you want to pull up an image of that for people? Can you do that on your screen? Or is it not worth it?
I can. What should I search?
Just here. I'll put something in the chat.
Put it in the chat.
Let me. Where are you? This is such a free-form show anyway. Who cares?
Are you texting it?
See if you,
I see it.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat. See if you can pull up some of those images. Yeah, this is crazy. I'm gonna spiral on this. I'm totally gonna revisit this in the next presentation. The fact that it has 12 stars, there's 12 moonwalkers and 12 archetypes.
Is there any one in particular? What are we?
I'll find one that I like. Here's a woodcut. It's from the British Museum. Try this. That's good, what you've got right there. Or try this one. Do you see that one I just put in the chat?
I'll pull up in a second. Let's see. We've got that one.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty spot on. That's pretty spot on. So you've got Mary on the moon in Revelation 12, and then you've got Apollyon or Apollo in Revelation 9. So you've got
Mary and Moon.
You've got it all blended together. And again, I'm not saying that this is orchestrated. This could just be the holographic matrix driven by archetypes. That seems to be that's the theory that I favor.
That is pretty succinct. This is from the British Museum online if anybody wants to go find it. And you can get it on a pillow from their store.
I might do that.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool. I might do that.
Cool.
All right.
I
messed up my slide.
Get some commission.
All right. Let's go to the very last slide. So I made a mistake, which Jordan corrected in post. Last presentation, I said I was talking about this image from Voyage to the Moon or Trip to the Moon by Georges Méliès. I said, oh, he has the wizards disrobe into scientists, or the scientists disrobe into wizards. They're wizards the entire time. And I was speculating, I was like, why did he have the people that planned the trip to the moon as wizards? And I thought, okay, well, he's trying to say something about like there's still like this special class of like godmen that rule over us. And there may be some of that in there. And you can just like, was this like a truth drop that like going to the moon is like sorcery or something like that? There might be a more acceptable understanding of this. Apparently it was just his aesthetic. You know, it's not the only time in this little film where you have something that doesn't fit with the cosmology, right? Instead of having astronomers, he has these wizards, but there's like creatures that like are and he wanted to like capture like fantastical elements and blend the two together, which is like totally justifiable from an artistic perspective. You don't have to be making some big commentary. You just want to apply your particular mystical view of the world to things. And that's how he saw it. The idea of going to the moon was so fantastical. Why not blend the two together just for the sake of whimsy, just for the sake of aesthetic taste? And, you know, maybe at the same time he was making fun of academics a little bit who thought of themselves as being more than they were, and kind of like being like, look, you guys don't know what you think you know. At the end of the day, you're just cosplaying as wizards. So but I think also Méliès was a stage magician as well. So you get a lot of that in the film. You see a lot of the early special effects evolved out of stage magic.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's all I have for today. I'm now that the Bible study is done, I can move at a faster clip of these. I'll probably in about a week or so come back with the magician as kings and talk about how the God-man magician became a ruler. I started working on that this morning. So without that's all I have to say. Jordan, do you want to close?
No, this was fun. Excited for the next one.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for helping me out today.
You got it.